is a race on, and we have spoken to most of the candidates so far. And tonight we're joined by another one, and this is State Senator Jose Peralta. Jose, are you there?
I am. How are you?
Good, sir. How you doing? Welcome to Woodhaven.
Good. I'm good. First and foremost, I must apologize for our last potential encounter. There was a glitch in our communication, so I want to apologize to all the listeners out there that were expecting me to call in, and unfortunately I didn't because we unfortunately had the wrong number. But this time we got the right
We got it right. That's great.
Yes.
Thank you very much. No problem. Not a problem at all. So how's it going out there on the campaign trail for you?
I think it's going well. We are going from area to area, town by town, and we're being very well received. Look, I think that the people in Queens are looking for something completely different. They're looking for someone who's going to talk about economic development, responsible economic development, talk about creating good jobs, talk about protecting small businesses, talk about creating good schools and affordable housing and safe streets, and also have a track record in doing that. And that's what I've been doing for the last 11 years, 8 years in the Assembly and 3 years in the New York State Senate, and that's what I've been doing. I've worked with many individuals from Governor Cuomo to Attorney General Schneiderman on ensuring that we protect our housing stock through foreclosure prevention services and restoring that in our budget. I've worked with many local leaders in trying to create responsible jobs and protecting small businesses in the district that I represent, which happens to be the United Nations of all Senate districts, I like to say. And that actually puts me in a good position to make that transition into representing the United Nations of all boroughs, which is Queens. But working together with Governor Cuomo, with Attorney General Schneiderman, with the District Attorney Richard Brown, with all the elected officials in the area like Councilwoman Julissa Ferreras and Councilman Danny Drum and Assemblyman Francisco Moya and others, we've managed to really improve the quality of life of the people of the area that I represent in New York State Senate. In the 13th Senatorial District, and now I want to bring that experience, and I want to bring that little bit of that combination of Marty Markowitz becoming a cheerleader for the borough and substance, legislative substance, to Borough Hall. And I think once we do that, it's going to be a very exciting tenure.
Excellent. You said a lot of things that we're interested here in Woodhaven, and one of the things I like to talk about. You talk about small businesses. And we live in a community. We've got a vibrant shopping strip, in which vibrant by that definition means we have a high occupancy rate, which is good. But we do see more and more vacancies for longer lengths of time, and it's a little concerning as a resident, someone who has invested in this community, that it's a tough market out there for businesses. What kind of things can we do to help the smaller businesses in a community like Woodhaven?
Well, first and foremost, we have to protect existing businesses. And what does that mean? That means that the small businesses need to stop being the ATM machine for New York City. And what I mean by that is the fact that small businesses they're under attack because you have all these inspectors that come into a small business and they start giving them violations from the Department of Buildings to the Department of Consumer Affairs to the Department of Health, and it's violation after violation after violation, and there is no opportunity to fix these violations. Instead of just what happens is that they just give them these violations instead of saying, well, you have 15 days to fix this, you have 30 days to fix this, we'll come back, and if it's not fixed, then you'll get a fine. But the small businesses have really become an ATM machine for the city of New York, and I think that if we eliminate that and we streamline these agencies so that they can give small businesses an opportunity to amend some of these violations, I believe that small business will be able to flourish. And the borough president has the power to convene all these different agencies, at least in the borough of Queens, and really give that initiative to these agencies so they can start working on giving them an opportunity to fix these violations. Working closely with the city council members, then we can legislate and ensure that people do get a warning before they get a violation. And that's in terms of how we can help maintain the existing businesses. In terms of trying to attract new small businesses into the area, then we need to start working on giving them incentives, tax breaks, be creative and think outside the box in how we're going to attract businesses that have a particular niche into a particular area where it can grow. Because if they're employing 4, 5, maybe 10 people, but it's a particular business that's booming, then it's going to be a staple in the community. And that's what we want. We want small businesses not only to maintain themselves but to flourish. And once we do that, then you'll start seeing less and less of these empty lots or empty storefronts that you're starting to see in many different places, because small businesses cannot maintain the rent that they're paying, the property taxes that they're paying, the utilities that they're paying, and sometimes there are even issues, for example, with restaurants, where you have a restaurant that's maybe an ethnic restaurant, and then you may have a street vendor that's right in front of it selling the same type of food, which cuts into the restaurant's profit. So there are various issues that small businesses have to deal with that hurt the bottom line, that hurt their pockets, and we as legislators, and particularly the Queensboro president, will play a big role in trying to curb that. And working with the new administration, the new mayor, the new public advocate, the new controller, I think, and of course the city council members, we can make a difference in allowing small businesses to maintain themselves, flourish, and get rid of this nonsense that small businesses have become, which is an ATM machine for the city of New York. That shouldn't be the case.
Outstanding. As a Woodhaven Residents Block Association, we have had and can speak to some of those issues, and we've been battling sanitation for just that issue. So we have been through that, and you're speaking our language there. Asking you about let's take a turn to something else you mentioned there, and that was schools. And you talked about building better schools. What can we do for our schools to help position our children for the next for the future?
Well, look, really, it's a two-part answer to that question. First, we have to ensure that every child has a seat. We have to ensure that every child has a seat, because or else what we're simply doing is playing a game of musical chairs. We start closing schools, we start opening up schools to 2, 3, 4 schools in one building. It's just a game of musical chairs that we're playing if we are not allowing the construction of new schools that are going to seat every child. So we have to call it for what it is. It's a crisis. There's a school overcrowding crisis. More and more people are coming to this great borough of ours. People want to call this borough their home. So if they're going to call this borough their home, they're going to start families here. Then they're going to have children. They're going to go to school, to the local schools. So we need to make a real investment in creating these schools. And this is where I differ from many of my opponents that are running in this race. Is I'm the only candidate that's talking about how there needs to be a team, whether it be a small team, but a team at all 3 levels of government. There has to be a team situated at City Hall. There has to be a team situated in Albany. There has to be a team situated in Washington, D.C. So we can be proactive on all issues from policy to budget. And if we hear something in the halls, a whisper of what's going to come down the pike, then we need to be prepared and be proactive instead of being reactive. And we need to really make the true investment of capital dollars. And this is where state government and city government work together to get capital dollars to create the schools and the seats necessary for our kids. That's one aspect. The other aspect is really getting best practices and really working with educators to really create a curriculum that's going to prepare our kids for the jobs of tomorrow. Whatever that curriculum is, and stick to that curriculum as opposed to changing the curriculum every 2 or 3 years because, well, we want to tweak it because maybe this curriculum is going to give us better numbers. And that's what's happened under the Bloomberg administration for the last 12 years. It's always teaching to the test, and it's always about how the metrics are going to prove how well we do. And we really need to change that philosophy. So we need to work on creating a better curriculum, and the best way to do that is to hire professionals, real experts, the people who do this best, and it's the actual teachers. We don't have to pay big-time consultants to let us know what we need to do with our children, and really make an investment in letting experts, these teachers, really create this curriculum for us and stick to it. Because we need to start preparing for what's going to come around the bend, and the tech centers and what's going to happen down the road. Look, we already New York City was happy to announce that Roosevelt Island was going to get a tech center. Well, that's nice, but we can attract a tech center in Queens. We have a location for it, possibly right here in Willets Point. That would be a great location. There are 60 acres there that are up for grabs. 20 right now are being proposed by there's a proposal there by the Wilpons and related, but there's another 40 acres that could be used. Why not create a tech center that can attract the best and the brightest into that area, so that we can really generate some of these the jobs and what's going to come around the bend. And I think that if we prepare our children from the beginning with a great curriculum, I think, and we have these tech universities or these tech centers that can sort of become that hub for us, then I think Queens and New York City can really get on the map as possibly even compete with Silicon Valley.
Excellent. Yeah, and listen, I think anything we can, children obviously they're our future, and they are such a great investment. And it's I would always want to see more dollars invested in for children and education than any other place. And we find it here frustrating in Woodhaven that it seems that every year we need to go to bat and stand out in the street and protest to make sure that our library doesn't get closed or or the hours shortened. So for where do libraries fit into your scheme of education in terms of maybe throwing some support their way?
Well, libraries are key, and not just key for the borough, but also key for the newer arrivals, the immigrants that are coming into this borough, and I think that's huge. I mean, because the first place that you get to use, with the first facility you get to use as an immigrant, you get to use is most likely a library, and you get to learn and you get to read and you get to really explore what's out there. So I believe that libraries are essential to maintain. So there has to be library services 7 days a week. There has to be library services and the resources to fund these services. Look, it's really about political will. If you're interested in really putting your money where your mouth is, you will find the right amount of money to invest in libraries and education. And sometimes you have to go and think outside the box. Because like I said earlier, we're having a crisis with education. We are overcrowded, and we really need to step it up. If we don't step it up, we're simply going to try to play a game of catch-up, and that is not the investment that we want for our children, because then they're not going to be prepared, because we're talking about a global economy now. So our children have to compete not just with other children within this city, this state, or this country. Our children compete with students around the world. So we really need to be very competitive and invest the resources and the dollars. And I know people say, well, where we're going to get the money from and how we're going to, well, let's get creative. And that's where the borough president can work closely with all levels of government to really find the means to invest in education, even if we have to do one-shots that are going to allow for the building of new schools, that are going to allow for the infusion of dollars for a curriculum that's really going to work. Because we need to invest in math, we need to invest in science, we need to invest in libraries, we need to invest in the development of the young child's mind, and that is going to trigger a learning curve that eventually will be something that will produce maybe the next Einstein, the next genius that will help that will help our society down the road. You never know. We can find a cure for something that we've been looking for centuries.
You never know when those investments and how they're going to pay off. I've got two last questions for you here. One, over here in Woodhaven, obviously, because you're not part of this district, we might not be 100% familiar with you. What's something about yourself that our residents would not know about you that you would like them to know?
Well, look, I am the son of immigrants who came from the Dominican Republic to live the American dream. My father worked as a bank teller. My mother worked at a factory. They wanted to come here so that their children can have a better life than they had. And they put us all through public school, and little did they know that eventually one of their children was going to run for the New York State Assembly and become an assemblyman and then become a senator and then have the possibility to run for Queensboro president. And they came here to live that American dream for us. And now I happen to represent the United Nations of all Senate districts, and it's a wonderful thing. And I think that my personal experience in representing the United Nations of all Senate districts and couple that with what I understood growing up and what I've seen growing up will allow me to understand the various cultures and the various complexities of the diversity that we have in this great borough, because our diversity is really our strength. I'm an individual who has worked hard for the last 11 years, like I said, 8 years in the Assembly, 3 years in the Senate, to fight for issues that matter, whether it be good jobs, good schools, safe streets, affordable housing. And I think that the next thing that we also need to concentrate on is the Far Rockaways, because the next borough president really has to focus on creating and rebuilding better and smarter, because it's not about it's not about if we get another storm, it's about when we get another storm, because it's going to happen. Sure. So it really, the next borough president is going to really need to focus on a lot, and they're only going to have 8 years if they get reelected to do it.
Mm. All right, well, last question here, and this is something I have asked every candidate thus far. Every Friday night before I go on the air, I sit down with a nice Italian ice. Where do you buy your Italian ices, and what's your favorite flavor?
Lemon Ice King. Lemon Ice King on 108th Street, and my favorite flavor is rainbow.
There you go. All right. Well, listen, it's been a real pleasure, and good to talk to you, and good luck out there in the campaign. Hang in there. And
thank you.
We hope to talk to you again soon.
No, definitely. Thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
That's State Senator Jose Peralta, who is running for Queens Borough President. And, that's a 6-way race, and we have had 5